They told me to keep quiet, for the family's reputation. But what they really meant was, don't tell the truth, Clara. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still hear my mother's voice trembling with fear, not for me, but for what people might say about us. One mistake, one rumor, and suddenly I became the shame of the Hayes family, the daughter who had to disappear so their smiles could survive. It wasn't the betrayal that broke me. It was watching the people I loved pretend they didn't see it happen. My sister took everything, my peace, my name, even the man I once thought I'd marry. And the worst part? Everyone applauded her for it. They called her charming. They called me jealous. That's the thing about silence. It doesn't protect you. It buries you. I was buried for years under their lies, smiling in family photos that made me sick inside. But the night I decided to speak, the truth ripped through our perfect little world. And nothing, not even their precious reputation, survived. In every photograph, we looked perfect, the Hayes family, polished and proud. My father, Daniel Hayes, stood tall in his tailored suits, the kind of man who believed silence was power. My mother, Margaret, was the social queen, her smile rehearsed, her words always measured. And then there was Evelyn, my younger sister, the family's golden light. Every room she walked into seemed to bend toward her. Me? I was the quiet one. The steady daughter. The one they relied on when things went wrong but never celebrated when things went right. At dinner, the conversations always circled around Evelyn's latest triumphs. Did you hear what Evelyn achieved this week? My mother would say proudly, passing her another serving before anyone else could even ask. I'd smile, pretending I didn't notice how invisible I'd become. Our family dinners were performances, laughter timed perfectly between glances, wine glasses raised to nothing real. Father would talk about his business partners, mother about her charity events, and Evelyn about how everyone adored her at work. I'd quietly clear the table afterward, unnoticed, my thoughts screaming louder than the silence between us. Sometimes I tried to speak, to share a thought, a small success, something from my world. But my mother's eyes would flick to her phone, my father's to his watch. Not now, Clara, she'd whisper softly. Let's not make it about you. That phrase became my cage. Let's not make it about you. So I learned to shrink, to smile when they needed me to nod when Evelyn lied, to play my part in the picture-perfect family, even when it burned. Every year, we hosted the Hayes family reunion, a grand garden party meant to remind everyone of our unity and success. Guests would compliment my parents for raising two beautiful daughters. They'd look at Evelyn and say, she must be the older one. My mother would laugh softly and never correct them. That day, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass door, standing behind my sister, half-hidden, like a ghost at my own home. Later that night, as the guests left and the house fell quiet, I heard my parents talking in the study. Father's voice was low, serious. She's too emotional, Margaret. We can't afford another scene like last time. Mother sighed. I know. I just wish Clara understood how much our reputation matters. They didn't know I was listening. They didn't know that my silence wasn't obedience, it was survival. But something in me cracked that night. Because love, I realized, had conditions in our house. You were valued if you made the family look good. You were dismissed if you made them uncomfortable. And when my sister's laughter echoed down the hallway, the same laugh that once comforted me, I knew something was shifting. Something darker. Because in the Hayes family, perfection was a mask, and I was starting to see what lay underneath it. It began quietly, as most betrayals do. A single invitation slipped into the mail, sealed with a gold ribbon. I remember holding it in my hands, my heart racing before I even opened it. The words blurred as I read them. You are cordially invited to celebrate the engagement of Evelyn Hayes and Andrew Miller. Andrew. My Andrew. The man who had once promised me forever. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands shook, my stomach twisted, and I stared at that invitation like it was a cruel joke. We'd broken up only months before, suddenly, without closure. He'd said he needed time. Space. Now I knew what he needed, my sister. When I confronted my mother, she looked at me as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. Clara, please, she said, smoothing the crease in my dress. This is Evelyn's moment. Don't make it about you again. About me? I whispered. She's marrying my ex-fiancé. She sighed, eyes full of pity, or maybe annoyance. You and Andrew were never meant to be. Evelyn is better suited for that kind of life.
Better suited. The words burned like acid.
That night, I sat in my room, listening to laughter from down the hall, Evelyn's laughter, mixed with my mother's. My father's deep voice joined in, proud and calm. I realized they weren't ashamed of what happened.
They were celebrating it. Days later, the rumors began.
Someone at Evelyn's workplace told another that I had ruined the first engagement, that I was jealous and unstable. Within a week, everyone knew. My phone buzzed with messages, some sympathetic, most curious. Are you okay? Is it true you caused a scene? Did he really leave you because you were obsessive?
Each one felt like another knife.
At family brunch, Aunt Linda tried to comfort me, but even she spoke in whispers.
Don't let it bother you, dear. People move on. That's life. I forced a smile.
Do they move on by stepping over their sister?
Her silence answered for her. When I finally saw Andrew again, it was at a pre-engagement gathering.
He looked different, sharper, colder.
Evelyn hung on his arm like a trophy. He didn't even flinch when he saw me.
Instead, he smiled politely and said, I hope there are no hard feelings, Clara.
We all deserve happiness. My jaw tightened. Some of us have to steal it to get it.
The guests laughed awkwardly, thinking it was a joke.
My mother shot me a warning glare across the room. That night, she came to my room again.
You're not to say a word at the engagement party, she said firmly. Do you understand? We've worked too hard to build this family's reputation. Let it go. Let it go.
My voice cracked.
You mean let her win?
I mean let her survive, she said coldly, closing the door behind her. I sat there in the dark, shaking, humiliated, discarded, silenced.
When the engagement photos appeared online, the caption read, a love story that was always meant to be.
Evelyn wore my ring. The one Andrew had once given to me. I thought I couldn't fall any lower than that moment. But I was wrong.
Because 2 days later, I discovered a secret. One message buried deep in Andrew's old email thread that changed everything I thought I knew. Evelyn hadn't stolen him by chance.
She had planned it from the start.
After Evelyn's engagement, the air in our home changed. Every room that once felt familiar now carried whispers instead of warmth. The walls seemed to echo with conversations that stopped the moment I entered. Laughter that used to include me now had a sharpness, like they were laughing at me, not with me. At first, I tried to stay civil. I told myself it would pass, that the truth would eventually speak for itself. But in the Hayes family, the truth was whatever made us look good. The first humiliation came at the Sunday brunch. A gathering filled with relatives, family friends, and polite smiles. Mrs. Collins, that woman who thrived on gossip, leaned toward my mother and said loudly enough for half the room to hear, It's such a relief that Evelyn found happiness after what her sister put poor Andrew through.
Everyone looked at me. Forks paused mid-A.
My mother didn't correct her. She just pressed her napkin against her lips, pretending she hadn't heard.
I wanted to disappear.
When I excused myself, my Uncle George chuckled and said, don't be so sensitive, Clara.
People talk.
It's all in good humor. Good humor.
I whispered.
You're laughing at my humiliation.
He smirked.
You shouldn't have lost him, then.
That was the moment I realized. This wasn't misunderstanding anymore. It was entertainment. My pain had become their gossip.
Over the next few weeks, it grew worse. Evelyn flaunted her new life, posting photos with captions like, When true love finds you, everything falls into place. Every time I saw it, my stomach knotted tighter. I avoided family dinners, but my absence became its own scandal. Clara's being dramatic, my mother told a neighbor once.
She's just fragile. Fragile.
A word meant to dismiss, not protect. Even at work, whispers followed me. Someone had told my colleagues I'd had a breakdown after Andrew left.
I started receiving pity instead of respect.
It was like my identity had been rewritten, not as Clara, the dependable one, but as Clara, the bitter, broken woman. The breaking point came at the family's charity gala, my mother's favorite event of the year. I was forced to attend, told to smile for the photographers and behave with grace. Evelyn, dressed in silver, stood beside Andrew as the perfect couple. I stood in the background, like the family's shadow. During the dinner, the host, one of my father's old friends, raised a toast. To the Hayes sisters, he said warmly. Evelyn, the bride-to-be, and Clara, independent one. The crowd laughed softly. My mother's smile didn't even waver. I excused myself to the restroom, trembling. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized my reflection. The forced smile, the tired eyes, the ache behind them. That's when Nina, my best friend, found me. She grabbed my shoulders gently.
Clara, you can't let them keep doing this to you.
I'm fine. I lied. No, you're not.
They've turned you into a villain in your own story.
I stared at her.
And no one even asked what really happened.
Her words stayed with me that night.
Because I had found something, a single message on Andrew's old laptop that Evelyn had left open one morning. It hinted at manipulation, at lies they both told to twist the narrative against me. But I hadn't told anyone yet. I was still clinging to hope that maybe, somehow, my family would see the truth on their own. That illusion shattered a week later, during a family dinner. Evelyn raised her glass, smiling sweetly.
To new beginnings, she said.
And to letting go of the past. Everyone clinked glasses, except me.
My father noticed.
Clara, he said sharply, show some respect.
Respect.
That word again, the one they used to control me.
I set my glass down.
You all want respect? Then stop pretending I deserved what you did to me.
The room went silent. My mother's face froze in polite horror.
Evelyn smirked, eyes glinting. And as I looked around that table, at every person who chose image over blood, I felt something inside me shift.
Not fear. Not sadness. Something colder. Sharper.
Because that night, I stopped trying to be part of their family, and started planning how to expose it. The betrayal didn't come all at once. It arrived in pieces, disguised as family decisions, polite conversations, and signatures on paper I was never allowed to see. After that dinner, I noticed how quickly things began to shift. My father stopped including me in business meetings, and my mother avoided eye contact whenever Evelyn's wedding was mentioned. It was as if I had already been written out of their story, erased quietly, without a sound. One morning, I walked into the study to find my parents and Uncle George seated with a lawyer. They fell silent the moment I entered. Clara, my father said stiffly, this is a private discussion.
A discussion about what? I asked, scanning the papers on the desk.
The lawyer hesitated before answering. Your father's estate adjustments, he said carefully. Some necessary changes for the future.
I felt my pulse in my ears.
Adjustments? You mean the inheritance?
My mother's tone turned sharp. It's just a matter of structure.
Evelyn's future requires stability. You've made it clear you want to live independently.
Independently.
The word sliced through me. I hadn't chosen independence, they had pushed me into it.
You're cutting me out, I said quietly.
Because of her.
Watch your tone, my father warned. This is not about jealousy. This is about responsibility.
Evelyn is getting married. She'll need more support.
I laughed bitterly. Support? She's marrying into wealth.
And you're disinheriting your own daughter for daring to tell the truth.
My mother's eyes hardened. No, Clara.
We're protecting the family from your emotional outbursts. That was the moment I understood. They weren't protecting the family.
They were protecting her. I walked out before the tears could fall.
But later that night, I overheard Evelyn in the hallway, whispering to Andrew on the phone.
Yes, it's done, she said softly.
Dad agreed to transfer the shares before the wedding. Clara's out completely.
Her voice was calm, proud. And I felt something inside me break.
The next morning, I tried to confront her. She was standing by the window, brushing her hair, humming like nothing had happened. How could you?
I asked.
She turned, smirking. Don't act surprised, Clara. You were never meant to handle the family's future. You're too sensitive.
You stole everything from me, I whispered.
No, she said, tilting her head. I just took what you didn't know how to protect. Her words were poison. Sweet, deliberate poison. The days that followed were a blur of humiliation. My mother stopped speaking to me. My father told relatives that I had stepped away for personal reasons. Evelyn sent out wedding invitations with a smile, pretending nothing had happened. And when I refused to attend the rehearsal dinner, she posted a photo captioned, "Family means forgiveness."
People believed her. Of course they did.
She was radiant, charming, the angelic daughter who forgave her bitter sister. But the final blow came at the engagement party itself.
I hadn't planned to go, but Aunt Linda begged me, saying, "Just come for your mother's sake." Against my better judgment, I did. The house was glowing, filled with laughter and music. And then I saw it, a slideshow of Evelyn and Andrew's love story, playing on a screen for all the guests. The photos started innocently enough, until one appeared that stopped my heart. It was of me, standing beside Andrew, taken years ago when we were still together. The caption underneath read, "Every ending has a reason." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Evelyn covered her mouth, pretending embarrassment. My mother rushed to the screen, whispering frantically to have it removed, but it was too late. Everyone had seen it. Everyone had seen me reduced to a joke. I stood frozen, my cheeks burning, my throat closing. My father avoided my eyes. Andrew smirked. Evelyn's eyes gleamed with victory. That night, I locked myself in my room, shaking. I screamed into a pillow until my voice gave out. For the first time in my life, I realized I had no one, no ally, no family, no dignity left. But beneath that suffocating grief, something else began to stir. A new kind of silence, not weak, but deliberate, focused. Because if my family had buried me under lies, I would dig myself out with the truth. I opened my drawer, pulling out the folder I had hidden for weeks, the printed messages, the voice recording, the documents proving Evelyn's manipulation and my parents' cover-up. My hands were still trembling, but not from fear anymore. They wanted to silence me. They wanted me erased. But the next time I spoke, the world would hear me. And I would make sure they never forgot the name Clara Hayes again. 4 weeks after the engagement party, I moved through the house like a ghost who had learned how to breathe again. Grief was still a heavy coat I wore, but under it, something colder had fitted into place, a purpose that felt almost like clarity. I stopped asking them for apologies. I stopped hoping they would change. Instead, I began to plan. I started small. Nina became my anchor. She listened without flinching, held my hand while I read the messages and recordings until the edges blurred. Aunt Linda, who had always watched in silence, finally admitted she had seen things she couldn't forget. "I was afraid," she whispered one night, "but I'm tired of being quiet." Their faces were the first real proof that I wasn't completely alone. I made copies of everything. Emails where Andrew arranged meetings with Evelyn, text threads where Evelyn coached witnesses, the recording of my mother telling Andrew to keep this quiet. I printed them, organized them, labeled them like a case file, because that's what this had become, a case for the truth. I tucked originals into a safety deposit box and kept duplicates hidden in places my family would never suspect. Then I mapped the battlefield. The wedding would be the spectacle, the brightest stage where their lies shone the clearest. But I knew a speech alone might be dismissed as hysterical outburst. So I built layers, a public reveal at the reception, a legal letter to the lawyer handling my father's estate, and a trusted journalist I had met once at a charity event who owed me a favor. If one avenue was shut down, another would open. If they tried to bury me again, I wanted them to be buried by their own papers. Every night I rehearsed what I would say, voice trembling at first, then steadying into something like steel. "You can't silence the truth forever," I told my reflection. "You can expose it, or you can pretend it never existed." I recorded myself reading the facts, then edited the audio to play alongside the documents during the moment I planned to reveal them. I practiced staying calm, letting the evidence do the humiliating. I wanted faces to shift from smugness to shock, not because I wanted to destroy them, but because I needed to be seen as I had been, truthful. I also prepared for fallout. I reached out to a lawyer who specialized in family disputes, not to sue immediately, but to make sure I couldn't be gaslit out of reality again. I told Nina to be ready with backup drives. I told Aunt Linda to be present quietly in the crowd with a copy of the most damning text. Each ally I recruited was a small rebellion against their perfected silence. There were nights I almost folded. Fear whispered that I was reckless, that I'd lose everything. But anger was a clearer teacher. It taught me to be precise, not reckless. I didn't want a messy explosion, I wanted an undeniable unmasking. I wanted their carefully curated reputation exposed with proof they couldn't edit or erase. When I finally stood in the empty reception hall the night before the wedding, under soft chandeliers that had once felt warm, I spread my folder across a table and breathed in. The plan was set. The recordings were loaded. The journalist would receive an anonymous email with the documents if anything went wrong. Aunt Linda would sit near the front. Nina would hold the spare drive. I picked up the microphone one last time and spoke into the silence, practicing the exact first line I would use. "This is the truth you tried to bury with my silence." My voice didn't shake. Outside, guests were arriving for the rehearsal. Inside, the house felt like a stage ready for the final act. And as I walked out into the corridor, heart steady, I knew there was no turning back. Tonight, I would make them listen. The wedding day shimmered with perfection, the kind that hides rot beneath gold. Chandeliers glowed, cameras flashed, and the guests admired every detail of Evelyn's carefully curated dream. The air was thick with perfume and lies. I stood in the back corner, watching her glide down the aisle on my father's arm, the same man who had once promised to protect both his daughters. His smile, proud and controlled, made my stomach twist. Nina squeezed my hand. "You ready?" she whispered. I nodded, my pulse steady. More than ever. As the ceremony ended and the reception began, laughter echoed through the hall like thunder mocking my silence. I waited. I waited through the toasts, the dances, the speeches dripping with hypocrisy. My mother gave hers first, elegant, rehearsed, full of empty phrases about family, faith, and forgiveness. My father followed, talking about legacy. Evelyn and Andrew looked like royalty, basking in applause. Then the host turned toward me. And finally, a few words from the bride's sister, Miss Clara Hayes. The room fell quieter than I expected. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. My mother's smile froze mid-air, warning me. Evelyn's grin faltered just enough for me to notice. I walked to the microphone, every step echoing like a drumbeat of justice. My heart was loud, but my voice was calm. "Thank you," I began softly. "It's been a journey watching this family celebrate love, especially when I know what it costs to protect lies." A ripple of confusion spread through the crowd. My mother straightened. "Clara," she hissed under her breath, "that's enough." But I didn't stop. Some of you might not know this, but before Andrew was Evelyn's fiancé, he was mine. Gasps. Murmurs. I paused, letting the truth breathe. When our engagement ended, I was told to stay silent. To protect this family's reputation. To let people believe I was the problem. I took a deep breath, my fingers steady on the microphone. But tonight, I won't be silent anymore. Behind me, on the big screen, the slideshow flickered, and then, the first recording played. Andrew's voice filled the hall. "If she keeps asking questions, tell her it's her fault. She'll believe it." Gasps turned into whispers. I clicked to the next file. Messages between Evelyn and my mother, plotting to leak false stories about my breakdown. Each word landed like thunder. My father rose from his seat. "Turn that off, right now," he barked. I looked at him, and smiled faintly. "It's too late, Dad. The world's already listening." The next slide appeared, the inheritance documents. Signatures proving how I'd been cut out to protect Evelyn's marriage. Then, the recording of my mother saying, "If Clara speaks, she'll destroy us all." People were no longer whispering, they were staring. Some in pity, some in shock, others in disgust. Evelyn's face drained of color. Andrew's jaw tightened. My mother clutched her pearls like a shield. "Stop this!" Evelyn shouted. "You're ruining everything." I turned toward her, voice trembling but strong. "No, Evelyn. I'm not ruining anything. I'm exposing it. You ruined it the day you turned love into a weapon." She lunged toward me, but Nina and Aunt Linda stood between us. Aunt Linda's voice rang out, clear and cold. "Let her finish. It's time." The room went silent again. I looked out at everyone, the witnesses of our perfect illusion. 4 years, I let them silence me. I let them twist my story. But tonight, the truth belongs to me. I dropped the microphone, and the sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Andrew stormed out. Evelyn collapsed into a chair, sobbing, or pretending to. My mother stared blankly ahead, her composure shattered. My father looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. The guests began to leave, uncomfortable, whispering, avoiding eye contact. The fairy tale had ended, and all that remained was the raw sound of reality. Nina placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. I exhaled slowly, feeling years of suffocation lift. "No," I said. "The truth did." As the last recording played, my mother's words echoing, "She'll destroy us all," I turned toward the door. And as I walked out of that glittering hall of lies, I knew one thing for certain. Justice doesn't always come quietly, but it always comes. When the last recording ended, the silence that followed was almost holy. For the first time in years, no one dared to speak over me. The hall, once filled with laughter and applause, now echoed only with the sound of uncomfortable truth. Glasses clinked nervously, heels scraped across marble floors, and one by one, guests slipped out into the night, leaving behind the shattered remains of the Hayes family image. Evelyn was the first to crumble. She tore off her veil and screamed for Andrew, but he had already disappeared. Her tears, once her greatest weapon, no longer earned sympathy. My father sat motionless at the head table, his face gray with disbelief. And my mother, she just stared at me. That same woman who had once taught me to smile through pain now looked like she was staring at a stranger. "Was it worth it?" she finally whispered. I met her eyes. "It was never about revenge, Mom. It was about the truth." For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then she turned away, her pride crumbling like dust. And that was when I realized something profound. The family I had spent my life protecting had already been lost long before this night. What died in that hole wasn't our name. It was the illusion of love built on silence. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. The moonlight hit the driveway, reflecting off the scattered petals from Evelyn's ruined bouquet. Nina was waiting near the gate, her eyes red but proud. "You did it," she said softly. "I just told the truth," I answered. She shook her head. "No, Clara. You freed it." We walked in silence for a while, the weight of years finally lifting off my shoulders. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean, stripped bare but alive. For the first time, my voice didn't tremble when I spoke, and my heart didn't ache for approval. I had found something stronger than acceptance, self-respect. In the days that followed, the consequences came quickly. The story spread beyond our circle. Whispers of scandal turned into headlines. The Hayes family withdrew from public life. Father resigned from his firm. Mother stopped attending social events. Evelyn moved away, her perfect reputation shattered beyond repair. And me? I found peace in the simplest things: quiet mornings, long walks, laughter with Nina, and honest work that didn't require pretending. I started volunteering at a women's support center, helping others find the strength to speak when the world told them to stay quiet. Every story I heard reminded me why I had to speak that night, because silence protects the powerful, but truth protects the soul. One afternoon, months later, Aunt Linda visited. She looked older, gentler. "You know," she said, "I think your mother finally understands what she lost." I smiled faintly. I didn't want her to lose anything. I just wanted her to see me. "She does now," Aunt Linda whispered. "Everyone does." As she left, I stood by the window, watching sunlight fall across the garden, the same garden where my family once posed for perfect photographs. For the first time, I didn't feel like the shadow in the background. I felt like the only real thing that had survived. Because dignity, I learned, isn't something others can give you. It's something you reclaim when you refuse to be erased. Memorable line. They tried to bury me in their lies, but I grew roots in the truth.